So I just finished watching a Dune double feature. That means I watched the first part again and now the second part. Frankly, because this is a technical channel, I'm not going to talk about how great the writing was on Frank Herbert's part, really the source material, but I'm going to discuss my autofocus. And I think Greig Fraser really did it justice. It was a compelling sequel. They gave it some spectacle, were true to the book. Of course, they had to change some things due to time constraints and some things that may not have aligned to the silver screen, and that's understandable. I mean, not all books are going to be direct translations to the screen. I mean, many of the greatest books don't even need a screen adaptation. I mean, a lot of Tolkien's work doesn't need to be put on display. I mean, if it's done properly, I'm looking at you, Peter Jackson, then yeah, and not rushed, because we've seen what happened with the Hobbit series. But this picture, it was several years in the making, and even though it had its constraints, I'm talking about the first Dune, it had its coronavirus constraints as well as HBO's situation wanting it to premiere as well on their streaming service, which is so stupid. I think that's why Christopher Nolan really opted out of their partnership and just went straight to Universal. But I think that this picture is gonna be, it's already an instant classic. I mean, that I could tell you right now. And in terms of cinematography, which I'm pretty sure most that watch this channel are into, yeah, this is gonna be a huge contender. Now, what I like about Greig Fraser is that he's not afraid to experiment. Yeah, he's been made famous for shooting the creator on the FX3, really by this community more than anything. But in this picture, he's shooting on the Arri Alexa LF, which simply stitches two, I think three Arri sensors and makes for a really good wide aspect ratio. Even if you're not shooting on wide spiracles, you could get the same result with I think they were using rehoused lenses, but their process when they have their somewhat final cut is to impose that on film. So it has that film grain as opposed to static or something more digital, because I think he was going for the Lawrence of Arabia or naturalistic type of feel. I mean, there are other ways to go about it. Of course, shooting on actual film, that would have made the film much more expensive. And I think, regardless, the story is still true. It talks a lot about the situation with power and blind following. And I think that the actors they're at the top of their game. You have my boy Thanos, you have Willy Wonka up in there, and you also have MJ. But yeah, I can't name all the actors off the top of my head. I can name the director, Denis Villeneuve, if you're French speaking. But yeah, there are only so many great ensembles you can get in a lifetime, and I think this is up there with, I want to say, the first Star Wars. With the first Dune, you had time constraints, you had studio constraints, liberty constraints, and David Lynch isn't proud of it to this day because he didn't have final cut. And I think he said it best, that if you're ever doing a picture, anything that you want to work with, make sure you have final cut.
Do you regret making it?
Yes, except it just nailed this idea, never, ever do a film without final cut.